Let's get ready to rumble!
Chris Dixon, the editor, he quotes that 50 Cent wants to change boxing. He's looking to put on what he calls deep and strong bills, rather than shows that are built up and defined by the main event. The guest column is Bob Me, so we're just gonna hit the bullet points of his first topic of matter. Amir Khan was favored to defeat Danny Garcia, who was a sizable underdog. Garcia exposed Khan's fragile chin. If Khan had won as expected, he would have vacated the WBC belt and went after a big fight with Floyd Mayweather. This would have saved them the further embarrassment of delaying a Jose Elusigen's long-awaited title shot. Instead, he's got to box Lucas Matisse for the vacant interim title at 140. Look, I tried to be quite meticulous in breaking down news stories, but I'm not going to run around the internet trying to figure out why. Garcia has a title, which he gained by defeating Eric Morales over 12 rounds for the vacant WBC crown. And he's not a diamond champion like the WBC crowned Sergio Martinez has. He's just a regular champion, so I don't understand where there's a place for an interim champion. I really don't get it. If the official champion was on hiatus for whatever reasons, injury, prison or something, then you could understand that, but it's increasingly becoming a stupid joke. Bob Me, who was a big hater of the David Haye and Chisora fight, he's looking for any kind of loophole that he can find so he can focus on what destruction that David Haye and Derek Chisora has left behind it. So now he's trying to say that the Luxembourg Boxing Federation are undermining their own fighters because they will not be able to challenge for the European Boxing Union's titles from now, or at least indefinitely. These are some of the sanctions that the Luxembourg Boxing Federation and Frank Warren will possibly be facing in the wake of Haye and Chisora. And Bob Me is now trying to say that the EBU is such a great body with such great morals and such great standing. But if they were such a great body, and you don't hear about what I'm going to say so much these days, but in the 80s and 90s, there was a common and regular pattern in European title fights that the fighter that had to sacrifice home advantage in Italy or Germany, any of them two countries, would never get a decision. Never. You know? And this was under the EBU for years. I used to read about it and watch it on television. So the way I see it is Luxembourg fighters might have to fight for the EU title, which is different from the EBU. Please don't ask me to sort out all this alphabet shit, but it is different. And this is what Bob Me is considering the lesser title, but the way I see it, titles are so devalued these days, we're more concerned about matchups. That's what basically made Haye and Chisora such a resounding success. Not just as a fistic endeavor, but as a business, marketing, and promotional venture too. And it's laughable that Bob Me is attacking a referee that the EU appointed in the fight between Richard Towers and Gregory Toney, which was a bit of a farce, but you could aim the same criticisms at a lot of referees who have been appointed by the EBU, the WBC, WBA, the whole alphabet if you want. So, Mr. Bob Me, in my opinion, you are now clutching at straws and you need to give it up. Haye and Chisora did what it did. You know, both guys are good friends now. And basically, looking for a negative and a positive is never a good look.
It's a no-brainer.
The panel is asked, which nation will be the most successful in the Olympic boxing tournaments? DeMarcus Corley says America have a great chance of winning at least a couple of medals, and they should do well in the tournament. Gary Lockett says, Cuba are not the force they used to be. They've slipped off the pace in the last 8 years. He says the Soviet nations should do well, highlighting Russia and the Ukraine as the standouts. Emmanuel Stewart has put a lot of stock in Anthony Joshua, who is representing the UK at super heavyweight. Emmanuel says there's not a lot to get excited about in Olympic boxing anymore. Jamie Moore says the British team have quite a good team and he thinks the Americans are quite talented, but he seems to be undecided in saying who exactly is going to dominate. Then the next question is how successful can the partnership between 50 Cent and Floyd Mayweather Jr. become in this new promotional partnership venture? DeMarcus Corley says very successful and he wants to speak with Floyd soon because he'd like to get on board with what they're doing. Gary Lockett says Floyd has the potential to earn more money outside the ring than inside. And with the backing of 50 Cent, it's likely to be very fruitful. Emmanuel Stewart says it should become a success. Floyd Mayweather and 50 Cent have great track records in business. They are both very successful young men, and he thinks it will be good for boxing. Jamie Moore, he says it's a potentially massive partnership, as money is power. The crossover appeal is obvious, as 50 Cent is a giant in the music and entertainment industries.
This country, you gotta make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power. Then when you get the power, then you get the woman. That's why you gotta make your own moves. That's why you gotta make your own moves.
So we move on to the letters and the tweets. When you're talking about old school boxing around certain people, you have to be very careful because any incompetence or lack of knowledge or not being sure on your behalf can make you look quite stupid. And I have a feeling that Stan Hopkins is one of them guys who you have to watch what you're saying. Stan answers Mark Tahar's letter on the 19th of July issue, where Mark was asking for information about James Wharton. And apparently James was born on the 3rd of March in Morocco in 1813. He fought under the name Young Molyneux. He was a cabin boy on a steamer where he engaged in fights en route to England. He was apparently very skillful. His first contest was against Tom McKeever in 1833. He was in the corner of Ben Court and Bendigo Thompson, who were two well-known pugilists in that era. He died in 1856 in Liverpool. Damn, Stan, you got a lot of information on that one there. Yeah, I mean, respect. Here's another dude who's got very sharp ears, and his name is Ake Sintring. And he says, through the years, I've been used to boxing news being correct in the smallest detail. But after Teofilo Stevenson's death, you wrote that his parents came from Jamaica. Not so. At least his father was from St. Vincent and came to Cuba in 1923. I met Stevenson in his house 4 years ago, coming from the countryside. He was used to having animals in or near his house, so when entering the house, he was met by a hen with a chicken. It was in the morning past 9 o'clock. The champ was late. I wondered whether he'd get up before 10. And of course he did. Mrs. Jennifer Rogers is not very happy with Mr. Fury. Mr. Fury is so full of himself, saying he is the best heavyweight in Britain. He fights no one special and avoids David Price, who would knock him out. Straight to the point, as most women who follow boxing are. Danny Grantham is fighting Lenny Dawes' corner, saying that he deserves a title shot against Darren Hamilton, who is the new British champion at 140 after displacing Ashley Theophane. Danny cites Lenny's last fight against Dean Mills, where he stopped his man in 7 rounds and apparently looked very good. And he's fighting his corner. Sean McCarthy seems to think that Bernard Hopkins would be a good coach for Amir Khan. Sean thinks that Freddie is not teaching Amir to use his feet enough to both control a fight and maneuver himself out of trouble. Jamie Ingleby is asking why in the recent 10 count entitled Who Needs Hair, he wants to know why Rubin Hurricane Carter was not included. He says that Carter was the most fearsome, bold prize fighter of them all. Ignore all the factors surrounding his false incarceration. This guy could punch, and where was he in the publication entitled The 100 Greatest Fighters Ever? Very good point. Rubin Hurricane Carter was falsely imprisoned in the prime of his powers, for a murder that he didn't commit. There's actually a film called Hurricane, and Denzel Washington plays Hurricane Carter, and he does a tremendous job. And I'm not going to encourage you to download films for free on some torrent, but if you come by that film Hurricane with Denzel Washington, you need to watch it. You need to watch it. Let's go to the tweets. This guy is a great name. At Anthony Ogogo. 1 down, 4 to go. I'm absolutely buzzing. The roar of the British crowd was something in fairy tales and dreams. Thank you, Britain. The biggest fight of my life is next against the reigning world champion. Time to spoil the party. The crowd get right behind Anthony Ogogo in his first Olympic bout. Jamie Moore, he congratulates Anthony Ogogo for getting Team Great Britain off to a winning start. Barry McGuigan at Clone Cyclone, he was bigging up Fred Evans, obviously for a performance that he carried out in this Olympics. I'm not sure what that was. At Oscar De La Hoya, he is watching all the Olympic boxing at Love Boxing. Alex Arthur, he replied to De La Hoya saying, I hope he was watching Josh Taylor. And that's a Scottish Olympic boxer that Alex Arthur is talking up. At Dan Raphael, ESPN, Don King says on Cloud Pascal's postponement, Pascal has Tavorositis. At Jeffro the Champ, well done to Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao for robbing boxing fans of what would have been a great event. Greed has a lot to answer for. Jeff Thomas rues the fact that the most eagerly anticipated clash of all time looks unlikely to materialize.
You're right. It's the biggest fight out there by far. We've been talking about it on and off, mostly on, for the past more than a year. Both guys went through and had other interim fights, but even when they were getting ready to fight other opponents, when Floyd was getting ready to fight Shane Mosley, when Manny was getting ready to fight Josh Clottey, when the fight blew up the first time, going into both of those other promotions, everybody wanted to ask, well, when are you going to fight the other guy? More so than they were even talking about the opponent that they were facing.
The readers' poll this week looks like it's brought the haters out. How long will 50 Cent and the Money Team last in boxing? 63% say flash in the pan. 25% say the long haul. 12% say a few years. See, what a lot of you clowns don't realize is 50 Cent has been in the rap game, signed to major labels. He was signed to Columbia in, let's say, 1998. He's been hanging around major labels since 1998. Yeah? Floyd's been winning world titles since probably about the same time that 50 was signed to Columbia. Around that same time frame. So if they've both enjoyed longevity in their respective fields for so long and become moguls, setting precedents in both music and boxing, what the fuck makes you think this is a flash in the pan? Joseph Taylor, he says, have you seen who they've signed? They ain't going anywhere. Ryan Keenan, they're going to be big. Jack Halton, the Money Team will be massive. They've already signed up elite level fighters. Jamie Savin, 50 Cent has a good business brain and people will want to be linked to Mayweather. So short term it looks good. It all depends how long Mayweather sticks around for. Mark Camps, he says stick to music. Oh, like he stuck to vitamin water and made insurmountable profits. Like he stuck to headphones. Like he stuck to G-Unit clothing and films. Shut the fuck up, man. Please, shut up. Shut up.
With a right, left, you're toothless. And then you say, God damn, they ruthless.
The 10 count this week is titled High Expectations. It's basically based on Olympians who failed to live up to their billing in the various years they competed in the Olympics. At number 1, we have Matvey Korobov. In 2008, the Russian was a 2-time amateur world champion, heading into the Beijing Games in 2008 and widely expected to bring back the middleweight bacon. His hopes were fried by 2004 gold medalist Bakhtiar Atayev. Barry McGuigan comes in at number 2. Before the Moscow Olympics in 1980, Barry competed in the European under-19s, and some dreadful officiating by the judges thwarted his progress. A few months after he competed in the Moscow Olympics, some thought he would get the gold in Moscow, but in the second round he was defeated by Winfred Kabunda. At number 3, we have Fernando Vargas. In 1996, in the Atlanta Games, Vargas lost in the second round by a razor-tight decision to the eventual bronze medalist, Marion Simeon. At number 4, we have Frankie Gavin, who in the 2008 Beijing Games, Frankie failed to make the weight and his dreams were dashed before he could even throw a punch. I think Frankie was a lightweight at the time. At number 5, we have Jeff Left Hook Lacey, who in the year of 2000, he was expecting to nab the top prize in Sydney, but he was outclassed by Gatabek Gatabekov. The Russian went on to win the silver, and 4 years later he took the gold. Robert Shannon, the only member of the 1984 US squad not to win a medal. He also missed out 4 years earlier when America boycotted the Moscow Games. Now, if you remember, last week I spoke about the 1984 USA team. Serious team. Serious team. At number 7, we have Mickey Carter, who in 1968, in Mexico City, he was taken out in the second round in the bantamweight tournament by Russia's Valery Sokolov. I'm assuming that Mickey Carter was a British fighter because he was a 2-time ABA champion. At number 8, we have Islam Timurziev. The Russian was favored to take the gold as Cuba for once were lacking a star in the super heavyweight division, but David Price had his eyes on the podium and he stopped him in 2 rounds. At number 8, we have Charlie Magri, who in 1976, the Londoner was defeated by Ian Clyde from Canada, who defeated him in the 3rd round. I can't make out if they meant he got defeated in the 3rd round of their fight or the 3rd round of the tournament, or in the 3rd round of the fight that was in the 3rd round of the tournament, if you get where I'm going. At number 10, we have Evgeny Makarenko. In 2004, the Russian won multiple world and European championships, but by the time he got to Athens, he defeated current cruiserweight world champion Joan Pablo Hernandez in the 1st round, but was ultimately defeated by the undisputed super middleweight champion and pound-for-pound stalwart today, who is Andre Ward, who outpointed him in the 2nd series. More disillusionment from Amir Khan, who has pointed out that he and Manny Pacquiao have similar styles where they are all offense and no defense. You see, there's a ring of truth to that, but you can't really blame Freddie Roach for that. You know, if you're going to leave him, cool, you're going to leave him. But the thing is, Manny can afford to fight with his face more because he just holds a lot better shot than you. So it's a silly comparison. You shouldn't be fighting like that because you can't hold a shot, you know? And I don't know. And all this switching trainers, you know what I mean? It's, in my opinion, a competent world champion has all his staff around him as a backup, really. It's a backup plan because he knows what he's got to do. He knows what he's got to do, you know? Like, the coach can help provide certain ideas and solutions, strategies in the camp, how to defeat a certain style. Yeah, no doubt about that. But ultimately, you's got to fight in the ring. There's no doubt about that. Johnny Nelson, he said it before the fight started, that he was watching Amir Khan in camp. And Amir was fighting like he just spoke to Larry Merchant on how to become a HBO-friendly fighter.
Shouldn't a prize fighter be able to fight when he's hurt?
Peter Quillin, Danny Jacobs, who I thought was retired because of some illness, but good to see him back. Paulie Malignaggi will all be on the Danny Garcia, Eric Morales bill. I am fast losing respect for Tavoris Cloud. And I really had high hopes for this guy at one stage. But check this out. Jean Pascal pulled out of their IBF light heavyweight fight. So Adonis Stevenson, he offered to take the place of Pascal. But Cloud declined this offer because Stevenson is a southpaw. Come on, dude. Come on, dude. You know what I mean? Don King said Pascal had Tavorisitis. So you must have some medical term for a phobia of southpaws. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Hang on. Gabriel Campillo was a southpaw. More exposure. Dude, I don't like saying boxers are soft, but I ain't feeling that at all, you know what I mean? And the thing is, Stevenson isn't even a southpaw who uses a lot of footwork, a lot of movement. He's more or less right in front of you, which is Cloud's fight. You shouldn't... Strange, but it is what it is. Shit, this is the second auction story that I've had to hear about recently. The first was Young Buck, who seemed to lose everything, including his name, in this auction. And now we're talking about Evander Holyfield. Julian Auctions have announced that a vast array of property belonging to Evander Holyfield will be put up for auction on November the 30th. Holyfield denies to have financial troubles, but the items that will be put up for sale are jewelry, his Olympic bronze medal, world title belts, robes, shorts, and other boxing memorabilia. A 1962 Chevrolet Corvette. To add insult to injury, Holyfield's been in London recently in conjunction with the Olympics, and he was interviewed by NBC's Today Show, and the interviewer didn't recognize who he was while he was conducting the interview. Holyfield tweeted about this the next day. But what Evander has to realize is, now correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's won a meaningful major fight since the 90s. I don't think he has. And the crowd has moved on. You know, he doesn't have that profile outside the hardcore boxing fans. Outside of that, to the average man, there's a lot of people who would not recognize Evander Holyfield now. As cruel as that sounds to say, that is the truth. It's the absolute truth. They'd recognize Tyson, who has a profile outside of his boxing image. Sticking with Evander Holyfield, he looks to be on this promotion, which is going to be held by Show Pony Promotions, which is a South African outfit headed by Damien Michael. And they're looking to stage a boxing event in honor of Nelson Mandela. Holyfield is scheduled to face Ray Mercer in an exhibition bout in 4 rounds in this promotion. And they're looking to have the likes of Mr. Fury. David Price is supposed to take on Michael Grant. Steve Cunningham is supposed to be on there versus Tabiso Manchunu. Matthew Hatton is supposed to take on Chris Van Heerden. And Roy Jones is supposed to be part of it too. But this is all speculation. And I'm not sure if the rest of the bouts, apart from Mercer and Holyfield, are exhibitions too. But we'll keep an eye on that as it develops. Now, I've got 3 items here, which are not the type of boxing stories that you want to hear every week, you know, but they have to be read out. Jeffrey Mafabula has 2 plates in his face after undergoing surgery for the broken jaw that he endured against Nonito Donaire. The South African will be out of the gym for at least 2 months. Raul Alvarez Jr., 16 years of age, from North Hollywood, died on July the 26th after sparring at the gym in Burbank. The results of the autopsy have not determined the cause of death. Ryan Clark spent 20 seconds celebrating his 6-round stoppage over John Joe Finnegan before his opponent was rendered unconscious. Clark stood in the corner and watched as Finnegan was given oxygen and stretchered from out the ring. As we went to press, the 32-year-old was in a coma following a surgery on a brain bleed. Ryan Clark said, "I can't take my mind off this fight. I wish I had a time machine. I've put somebody in intensive care. If he doesn't recover, I don't know how I'll live with myself." This bout was a rematch of a previous April meeting, which Clark scored a victory there too. Clark says any grudge between the 2 combatants was all an act, as they was sending messages to each other saying how much bums that they put on seats. Finnegan struggled to make the weight, and Clark knew early in the fight that he was a stronger man. "I knew my punches were hurting him. He was making noises, and I knew I was going to win. But there was no way I ever want to win like that." Everybody surrounding this fight is praying that Finnegan makes a significant recovery. But as we know, this is the fight game. Golden Boy have announced that they will stage high-profile professional debuts for the standouts from the US Olympic team on October the 14th and December the 15th. These fights will be televised on CBS. Billy Joe Saunders defends his middleweight Commonwealth title against Jared Fletcher on September the 14th at Wembley. Larry Holmes and Jerry Cooney get reacquainted as they team up to take part in the Pat Cairo Foundation Golf Classic, and the cause is for cancer research. Former Australian featherweight champion Lucky Gattilari, 62 years of age, has pleaded guilty to being an accessory for the 2009 murder of a Sydney businessman. Gattilari will be sentenced on September the 7th. Former IBF light heavyweight champion Clinton Woods has slammed any boxer who has been caught taking drugs. He claims that testing barely existed in America when he was active, and he is also critical of the numerous British boxers who have tested positive recently. "When it comes to taking drugs, there is no excuse, none whatsoever," said Woods, who retired in 2009 after losing to Antonio Tarver. "I remember when I was boxing, if I had a cold, I used to go to the doctors and see if there was something that I could take, because I knew that there were things I could not take because boxers know." For the full story, go to www.boxingnewsonline.net. Anthony Crowler could get an early chance for revenge over Derry Matthew, who upset Crowler in April. More auctions, and this is a surprise one. The Angelo Dundee estate is auctioning an extensive collection of boxing memorabilia, including the gloves worn by Muhammad Ali when he beat Sonny Liston in 1964. Also on auction is the gloves that Ali used when he faced Frazier in 1971 and he lost. "These gloves represent boxing's crown jewels," said Dan Imia, who is the SCP Auctions Managing Director. "They rank amongst the most significant sports memorabilia offered publicly. More artifacts will go under the hammer include Ali's 1963 boxing license, the gloves he wore against Floyd Patterson, the gum shield from his final fight against Trevor Burbick, as well as the gloves Sugar Ray Leonard used to defeat Roberto Duran in their rematch." Jim Dundee, Angelo's son, said, "A portion of the money will go to the Muhammad Ali Foundation, but the rest will pay for medical care for his sister. Through the sale of this collection, I look forward to fulfilling my father's wish, so necessary medical care can be provided for my sister, who suffers from multiple sclerosis. You see, we hear about names like Angelo Dundee and we just synonymously attribute money next to their name. But yet, in his death, they're having to auction off memorabilia, mostly Muhammad Ali's, to pay for Dundee's sister's medical bills. So it's not just the boxers who lose their way with their finances, you know? The world of commerce, finances, and businesses are not set up for creative people. They're set up for people who run the industries where creative people flourish, you know? It's up to creative people to get themselves a grasp on the dynamics and in and outs of finances. Or you'll see me reading out more of these auction stories concerning boxers or boxing trainers. You know what I mean? You'll never hear them stories about Bob Arum or Don King or Frank Warren. Yeah, I just thought I had to sound the alarm for Richard Abril, who is looking ahead of Gavin Reese, who he fights for the vacant WBA title in September or October. Abril is looking ahead of Reese, saying that he's going to unify the belts against Juan Manuel Marquez next year. But he doesn't want to look ahead of Gavin. Gavin Reese has moved back down from 140 to 135, and he's a much more effective fighter at this weight. And Gavin can also counterpunch very well. He has definitely got a better boxing brain than Brandon Rios. He might not be as strong as him, but he has a better boxing brain. He has quite a good rhythm on his boxing. He has good timing. And he's hitting harder at the new weight that he's fighting at. And he's a former champ at 140. He should not be written off. He shouldn't be written off. Gennady Golovkin is going to fight Grzegorz Proskar. That pits Golovkin's WBA world middleweight title against the European champ, who is Proskar, which could be a good fight. Sir Haye is in Zurich, is on the bill. He takes on Jonathan Gonzalez, who is a Puerto Rican and apparently a good fighter. So, something to look out for there. I've never really rode the Hank Lundy bandwagon like a lot of people have. And I did say last week, and I stick by what I said, I don't see how he gets through 9 rounds with Adrian Broner. I stick by that assessment. And he lost to a fighter named Raimundo Beltran, who Jack Obermeyer describes as the gatekeeper. A gatekeeper is a nice word for top-class journeyman. That's what it is. It's a nice word for that. And that's all Beltran was. And the Lundy camp can say that he was distracted by the managerial problems between his promoter, Jimmy Burtfield, and his manager, Ivor Cohen. They can blame it on the weight problems, but the thing is, a young contender has no business worrying about manager and promoter squabbles. Yeah? His job is to get ready and primed to fight. At this level here, even if you are weight drained, you're supposed to get past the gatekeepers of the division. So, Hank Lundy has to show me a lot more to convince me. I mean, I even heard some people on YouTube saying that they still want to see him fight Broner after he's lost to Beltran.
Shut up!
The Boxing News World Rankings at light welterweight reads as so. At number 1, Danny Garcia. At number 2, Lamont Peterson. At number 3, Amir Khan. At number 4, we have Juan Manuel Marquez. At number 5, Zab Judah. At number 6, Lucas Matisse. At number 7, Marcus Maidana. At number 8, Eric Morales. At number 9, Mike Alvarado. At number 10, Kendall Holt. I'm going to assume that Jose Elucigen is missing because of inactivity. Let me go through this list kind of quickly. Danny Garcia has beat Amir Khan, Eric Morales, and Kendall Holt. Now let me tell you something. He's beat 3 people on the list. That is actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good. Lamont Peterson, okay, we'll have to dismiss the Khan loss due to the drug implications. He's beat nobody on this top 10. Amir Khan has beat Zab Judah and Marcus Maidana. I'll leave it up to you if you want to put the Lamont Peterson fight in there in hindsight of what happened with Peterson getting caught with the testosterone in his system. Whether you want to give that victory to Amir by default, that's up to you. I'm not sure. I'm going to leave it at 2 with a high recommendation. That's what I'll do. One Manuel Marquez has beat nobody on the list. Zab Judah has beat Lucas Matisse. And that's it. Lucas Matisse has beat nobody on the list. Marcus Maidana has beat Eric Morales. Eric Morales has beat nobody on the list. Mike Alvarado has beat nobody on the list. And Kendall Holt has also beat nobody on the list.
I'm catching the flashback.
This week in 1978 saw Jim Watt and Alexis Arguello gracing the cover. This was the week where there wasn't one single British professional show, so overseas coverage dominated. It was reported that the world lightweight champion of the time, Roberto Duran, had broken 2 fingers on his right hand in a car accident and would be out of action until October. It turns out, though, he would box as early as September the 1st, knocking out Ezequiel Obando in 2 rounds. This was a non-title fight in Panama City. Talk of a super fight between lightweight champion Roberto Duran and WBC super featherweight king Alexis Arguello was scuppered when Arguello shockingly lost to Villamor Fernandez. The unheralded Dominican Republic man won a 10-round majority decision at Madison Square Garden. Boxing News reported that Fernandez took 2 months off from his job as a cab driver in New York to prepare for the bout. He won by fighting a smart fight against a harder punching opponent who has been rated up there with the modern day greats. Villamar's constant movement frustrated the Nicaraguan, who lost for the first time since February 1974 in a WBA title challenge to Ernesto Marcel in Panama. Alexis complained that his opponent just ran and ran and ran. I respect the official decision, but I thought I won because he just didn't fight. During the summer break on the domestic scene in Britain, British boxers had to travel to find work. Thus, it was that Henry Riney and Terry O'Connor were off to Johannesburg, boxing on a show at the Ellis Park Tennis Stadium that we previewed on our back page. Riney, the British welterweight champion, was boxing a 10-rounder against Harold Volbret, who held the supreme South African crown. In other words, Volbret held the white title and he had beaten his non-white counterpart. We predicted it will probably end in a points win for the South African, which is exactly what transpired. O'Connor is now a top referee. He was booked to box local heavyweight hope Jimmy Abbott. This fight fell through and eventually Abbott KO'd Robbie Williams in 5 rounds. That's not Robbie Williams who sings and all that shit, but a different Robbie Williams. Jim Watt was likely to have advantage for his ordered European lightweight title defense against Spain's Antonio Guinaldo after Mickey Duff won the purse bids with £15,000. The recent death of Johnny Tapia and the paralysis of Paul Williams were chilling reminders of the curse-like aura that seems to envelop boxers. The sport was still recovering from the triple tragedy that struck down Arturo Gatti, Alexis Arguello, and Vernon Forrest in 2009. Tapia died in circumstances that remain to be explained, and Williams broke his back in a motorcycle accident on May the 27th, 2012. Whether boxing is the cause or effect of these calamities remains an enigma. But if you cast aside superstition and examine the heartbreaking series of misfortunes with a clinical eye, certain patterns emerge that help explain, at least in part, What are the roots of the phenomenon? Boxers by nature are risk takers, individuals willing to jeopardize their physical well-being in search of a greater goal. I believe that numerous boxers, perhaps the majority, come to the sport already emotionally damaged. And there's no clearer example of this than Tapia. Traumatized by the murder of his mother and a childhood filled with abuse and neglect, he turned to boxing and discovered refuge in the ring, the only place where he was truly happy. Away from the ring, Johnny self-medicated with cocaine and alcohol in a futile effort to banish the demons that tormented him throughout his life. A course of action that led to a seemingly endless cycle of incarcerations and failed rehabilitations. The fact that Tapia managed to accomplish so much as a boxer is a truly remarkable testament to the man under the circumstances. On the other hand, it's doubtful that he would have soared to such heights had he just enjoyed a normal life. To sum up, Mi Vida Loca was both a curse and his greatest strength. Johnny's death was basically a slow suicide, the origins of which are easily understood by anybody who knows his painful past. The alleged suicides of Gatti Arguello, if indeed they were suicides, probably stem from an entirely different source. While many believe his gold-digging wife murdered Gatti, and that Arguello was the mayor of Managua in Nicaragua at the time of his death, a lot of theories point to Arguello being assassinated for political reasons. Both deaths were officially registered as suicides, therefore, just for discussion's sakes, let's assume Gatti and Arguello did kill themselves. If so, why did they do it? The guess here is that multiple concussion syndrome played a major role. Multiple concussions can be cumulative, and that's where more significant deficits occur, said Gary Pace, director of the Mayo Center for Education and Neurorehabilitation. We do know that as a result of multiple concussions, the brain does become more vulnerable to more long-term brain injuries, which results in a lot of the depression we see in individuals. For decades, the National Football League ignored the menace of multiple concussions. But due to a series of high-profile suicides by former players and a 2009 congressional hearing that has forced the league to revamp its concussion policy, it's no longer taken so lightly. Unfortunately, all of these measures were too late for retired NFL star Junior Seau, who shot himself in May 2012. Seau's teammates estimated that he suffered more than 1,500 concussions during his lengthy career. Currently, more than 2,000 NFL players have lawsuits pending against the league. It's ludicrous to think you can play in the NFL for a year, much less 15 years, in a position where you regularly come into contact with other players and not come out of it with a damaged brain, said Dr. Randall Benson, who is a brain researcher at Michigan Center for Neurological Studies. While there have been no studies focused directly on the link between multiple concussions and boxers who suffer from depression, there is absolutely no reason to think why they would be less susceptible than American football players. The death of undefeated slugger Edwin Valero on April the 19th, 2009, was also ruled a suicide. The former WBA super featherweight and WBC lightweight title holder had been arrested in Caracas, Venezuela, the day before on suspicion of stabbing his wife to death. The following morning, a fellow inmate discovered Valero hanging from the bars of a cell with his sweatpants tied around his neck. Again, as in the cases of Gatti and Arguello, there was doubt as to the veracity of the suicide. Amongst those who thought foul play may have been responsible for Edwin Valero's demise was Manny Pacquiao. Manny knew about the stabbing of Valero's wife, but when I told him Valero had committed suicide, he was totally shocked and surprised, said Pacquiao's advisor Michael Carnes. He thought about the possibility of a conspiracy and that it was possible that the family of Valero's wife had powerful friends, and so there could have been a conspiracy to get back at Valero. How can you hang yourself using your clothes? Pacquiao's and others' misguided misgivings notwithstanding, there is plenty of circumstantial evidence indicating that it could well have been a suicide. Valero had a serious alcohol and cocaine problem. He also had a history of domestic abuse, and according to his lawyer, Mildo Mora, he suffered from depression. On top of all that, the fighter fractured his skull in a 2001 motorcycle accident and had surgery to remove a blood clot, which prevented Edwin from obtaining a boxing license in certain jurisdictions. There is no doubt whatsoever that the 23-year-old Najai Turpin, a contestant in the first season of The Contender, committed suicide. Philadelphia police told the New York Daily News Najai had a long-term girlfriend, Angelo Chappell. They had been arguing in his car over custody of their 2-year-old daughter, Haye Chappell. In the early morning hours of February the 14th, 2005, at around 4 a.m., Angela Chappell left the car and Turpin fired the fatal shot into his own head. Even though he had lost the decision to Sergio Mora in his only contender bout, Turpin was still receiving $1,500 a week in living expenses from the reality TV show, and he was scheduled to fight again at the time of his death. However, those closest to Najee knew that something wasn't quite right. He just wanted to go partying, said his sister, Juanita. He'd go out quite a lot and then he'd come home and sleep on the couch. He told me he was too tired to train. Was Najee's psyche so fragile that the loss to Mora and the custody battle could have sapped him of his fighting spirit and his will to live? If so, it could be considered more anecdotal evidence that many boxers are already emotionally scarred by the time they put on the gloves. Let's turn from suicide to suicidal behavior. Since 1933, when young Striblin died as a result of a motorcycle accident, boxers and motorcycles have been a perilous combination. The two-wheeled rockets are dangerous enough in themselves, but when a large dose of reckless bravado is added to the mix, the danger then increases exponentially. Former lightweight champion Diego Corrales had a blood alcohol content approximately 3 times the legal limit for Nevada. He climbed on his Suzuki 1000 on the night of May 7th, 2007, when racing towards his fate. Corrales was attempting a high-speed pass when he struck the back of a car that he was apparently trying to overtake. He was thrown from off his bike and onto the highway. The man who had beaten Jose Luis Castillo in one of the most celebrated fights of the decade was pronounced dead upon arrival. His promoter Gary Shaw succinctly summed up Corrales' fatal accident when he said that Diego fought recklessly and he lived recklessly. That was his style. Paul Williams, however, is not a reckless man despite his profession. By all accounts, the 2-division former WBO title holder lives a relatively quiet lifestyle. Although his recent performances were far from his best, he was eagerly looking forward to a September the 15th bout with Saul Alvarez. until he crashed his motorcycle en route to his brother's home in Marietta, Georgia. Williams was riding his motorcycle at approximately 75 miles per hour when he swerved to avoid a car. The boxer was thrown through the air, landed on his back, and fractured the bones encircling his spinal column. He has since had surgery to stabilize his spine, but it is uncertain if he will ever walk again. Nonetheless, Paul remains optimistic and upbeat. He believes he will fight again and also says he wants to ride his motorcycle. While Corrales was inebriated and Williams was riding his motorcycle at an excessive rate of speed, making them both culpable for what occurred. Former British heavyweight champion Gary Mason was sober when he was involved in a collision with a van on January 6, 2011. The 43-year-old ex-boxer was pronounced dead at the scene and the van driver arrested on suspicion of causing death by careless driving. Mason's fatality did not seem in any way related to his boxing career and rather was a simple case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unless, of course, you subscribe to the theory that the shadow of death looms heavily over the heads of all boxers. Murder has also claimed the lives of an inordinate number of fighters over the centuries. But rather than take a grisly stroll down memory lane, let's examine 3 relatively recent examples. In August 2004, former IBF super bantamweight title holder Robert Quiroga, best known for his brutal 1991 defense against Kid Akeem Anifawashi, Robert was stabbed to death by Richard Merler, a member of the Bandidos motorcycle club. Merler was convicted of murder and sentenced to 40 years in prison. Almost 3 years later, in July 2007, former British heavyweight champion James Oyebola was shot in the face while attempting to help staff members of London's Chateau 6 club enforce a smoking ban. Oyebola died days later when his family requested that the mortally injured fighter be removed from off the life support. His killer was apprehended, and in October 2008, Kanyata Mubanga Mulenga was convicted of Oyebola's murder and sentenced to 28 years in prison. Finally, we come to former welterweight champion and the then reigning WBC light middleweight title holder, Vernon Forrest, who died in a hail of bullets on the night of July the 25th, 2009. Forrest had stopped at an Atlanta gas station where he was robbed at gunpoint while putting air in his tires of his Jaguar. Forrest then pursued the perpetrator and exchanged gunfire with him before turning around and heading back towards his car. It was at this point where he was shot 7 times in the back and died on the spot. Atlanta police arrested 3 men: DeMario Ware, who was the robber, Jonte Cruz, the getaway driver, and Charmin Sinkfield, the shooter. All 3 were convicted. Cruz and Ware were sentenced to life, while Sinkfield received the death penalty. If there is a common thread running through the 3 murders, it is that each victim, infused with a fighter's mindset, took a calculated risk and paid for it with their lives. Quiroga was playing cards with members of a notorious motorcycle gang when he became embroiled in a dispute with the man who killed him. Oyebola, described by the BBC as a first-class family man and a wonderful role model, interjected himself into somebody else's beef. Perhaps emboldened by the fact that he too was carrying a gun, Forrest decided to chase after the robber who was armed. Vernon was always the type of guy who was never going to let anybody take anything away from him, said his manager Charles Watson. He would give you the shirt off his back but if you tried to take something from him, he was going to fight you for it. A prize fighter's profession sets him apart from other men in more ways than one. He enters willingly into a realm where the currency is hurt and hurting, thereby accepting the considerable danger involved. It would be foolish to ignore the link between the disasters that plague boxers outside the ring and their profession. To start with, the kind of person who succeeds as a fighter is usually a gambler at heart. And that trait does not disappear when a boxer pulls off the gloves, nor does the measure of omnipotence that dwells within every fighter's psychological makeup. These attributes serve them well in a boxing match, but frequently backfires in their personal lives. Then there's the spillover effect of multiple concussions that tend to acerbate their entire situation. To put this in more simpler terms, in or out of the ring, a boxer is a prime candidate for catastrophe. Maybe it's a good idea for all involved, from fighters to fans, to reflect on the consequences of our passion and understand that the price the sport extracts from its participants is the real curse. Here are some of the other casualties. There are far too many cases to examine each individually. So, in order to give a greater understanding of the breadth of the lamentable state of affairs, this sidebar alphabetically tells of the fighters who have met with untimely deaths since the millennium. Jose Arbelodo died 27 years of age, bus crash. Jerry Ballard, 32 years of age, stabbed to death. Gary Baker, 19 years of age, car crash. Trevor Burbick, 52 years of age, bludgeoned to death. Vince Servi, shot to death, age 41. Richard Evett, 38 years of age, awaiting verdict. This is Boxing Beats and Rhymes. I reported on this story last week. And he was stabbed to death, but we're still waiting for the coroner's final verdict to make it official. Julio Gonzalez, 35, motorcycle accident. Alvin Hayes, 44 years of age, drug overdose. Gabriel Hernandez, 27 years of age, suicide by hanging. Jonas Hernandez, shot to death, 25 years of age. Nobutoshi Hiranka, car crash. No age is given. Noriyuki Komatsu, drowned, 29 years of age. Julian Letelo, 35 years of age, shot in the back and killed. Eddie Mello, 40 years of age, shot to death. Giovanni Parisi, 41 years of age, car crash. Luis Pinto, 24 years of age, suicide. Mandisi Cesari, 24 years of age, stabbed to death. Darren Sutherland, suicide by hanging, 27 years of age. Humberto Tapia, 25 years of age, shot to death. Dwayne Thomas, 39 years of age, shot to death. Tony Thornton, 49 years of age, motorcycle accident. Rasheed Wells, 30 years of age, shot to death. Andre Yeskin, 33 years of age, fell from a balcony. This article was written by the incomparable Nigel Collins, titled The Dark Side of Boxing. I didn't necessarily agree with every word, but it was brilliantly written. It was honest. It was brutal. It was depressing. It was enlightening. It was morbid. And all of that is boxing. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this boxing news column that I do weekly, because there's been a couple of channels I respected as well, who all of a sudden are doing boxing news videos, and can't see the point of 3 or 4 people doing them. It just doesn't make sense. And they've got more subscribers than me, so people are going to say, well, he's probably jumping on their shit. And if it was a case of where them plagiarizing my concept was taking money out of my pocket, I would probably take more stringent action within the YouTube guidelines, or just confront them themselves. But one thing I am, and you can laugh and scoff at what I'm going to say, I'm a very, very, very creative person. Very creative. So, I'm probably going to be coming with some new concepts of boxing videos. You know? They'll probably bite them too, but yeah, I'll move on from that and build again. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing with this boxing news column. But there'll probably be one next week and the week after. But in the meantime, I'm going to be looking at how to come at this shit a little differently. You know? Got a few ideas. So, stay tuned. Peace out.
Mm.